Happy Friday, everybody. Chief Meteorologist Brad Panovich here with your live weather impact tonight. We're talking heat, we're talking drought, we're talking no rain, but we do have a big cool down on the way. That's going to be the big story for the weekend. Let's start with the view outside right now. Great Friday night. Hornets playing down in Orlando. A lot of folks will be out watching that game outside this evening. A lot of watch parties across town. That game coming up at 7:30. Boy, what a great night to be watching basketball on a patio somewhere. Our view across the area from Monroe to Dallas, Charlotte to Kannapolis. Beautiful day. If this was the middle of summer, it would have been an absolutely picture-perfect day. But it's middle of April. The fire danger tomorrow remains high. It was high today. I'll just show you the fire outlook for today. It was elevated. I could probably just take this map every day and it'd be the exact same thing because there's really no change in these three main parameters for why the fire danger is high. Gusty winds, low humidity, dry fuels. Those three ingredients aren't changing. The only thing that would fluctuate would be the winds, but honestly, they'll probably pick up a little bit with this dry cold front. And even though it's going to get cooler, that's actually going to be even drier air that's going to be heading our way. Now, we're going into the weekend. I just talked to my son about that. He was like, Dad, can we do a fire pit tonight? And I said, nope. You know why? Because we have a burn ban in both North and South Carolina. Now, technically, this means no burning within up to 100 feet from a dwelling, and then local utilities and fire marshals and those kind of officials take over that area. But just to be safe, I would not be burning at all, any outdoor burning. Grills, okay. You could do grills, propane grills, gas, charcoal grills, as long as they're covered. But open burning fires in general are not permitted anywhere right now in both states, which makes sense because the fire danger is so high, and I definitely would preclude anybody from doing that just until we get some moisture. Maybe after Sunday, a little bit of humidity will help us out. Now, we've got a cold front. That's the good news, and it does have a ton of rain and storms with it right now, and actually a lot of severe weather in the middle of the country. I mean, this is a pretty significant severe weather outbreak ongoing from the Midwest down to the southern plains. Unfortunately, that front isn't going to bring that rain with it. It's just going to bring the cooler temperatures. Speaking of temperatures, I don't know what's going on in Concord. It is not 66 degrees there. They are definitely, someone dumped some ice maybe before they jumped on a plane over there on the sensor. It's in the 80s pretty much everywhere. Even in the mountains, we're in the 70s right now. But it's bone dry. I mean, the dew points are in the 40s and 50s. I've joked about this. If this was the middle of summer, this would be like, we would be loving this. This would be a warm, hot kind of summer day with no humidity. That would be a saving grace. And no thunderstorms, unfortunately, because there's no humidity to go with that. Now, tonight, because of the dry air, we do cool down into the 50s to near 60. Now, this is still above our average low, which is around 49, 50, but it's still fairly comfortable, and it's actually going to feel pretty nice. Tomorrow, though, by far the hottest day of this heat wave, because the cold front's coming in Sunday morning, and ahead of the cold front, you squeeze the air. That compressional heating really ramps up the temperatures the day before a cold front arrives, and that difference is going to be pretty dramatic. The high, I think, on Saturday will be 92. If it's 93, we'll tie the record high, by the way. By Monday morning, we're going to drop into the 40s, which seems crazy cold, I know, but 49, 50 is the average low, so it's really not that far off the normals. We should be in the 40s for the first half of the month. It's just because we're going to go from the 90s back to that. But this front is heading our way, and it does have some pretty chilly air behind it, at least briefly. It doesn't last long. This cold front moves through with almost no moisture, and I'm going to show you the close-up view, because remember yesterday and even the day before, we were getting a little bit excited. Maybe we could have a 20-30% chance, and it wasn't really all that much rain. Now, we were getting overly excited for a small chance of rain. Guess what? That chance of rain has actually gone down. So the front comes through Sunday morning, clouds. It will be cooler, but not much rain. In fact, the rainfall forecast amounts, yesterday I think I had 1/10 of an inch at most, which isn't anything. Now it's back to 0 or a trace. A trace is unmeasurable. For rainfall, the highest measurement of rainfall is 0.01, which is pretty low already. If it rains and it doesn't get to that threshold, it's called a trace. Snow, by the way, if you ever get a trace of snow, it's less than 1/10 of an inch of snow, which is even a lower threshold. Next 7 days, no real break in sight. This gets us through basically next Friday. But next weekend, I'm going to show you in a minute on my 10-day, there's a hint and maybe a little bit of a pattern change from a rainfall standpoint, not from a heat standpoint. Even though we have this cool front early next week, it's brief. Temperatures shoot right back up into the mid and upper 80s by the end of the week, and we're way above average. So this weekend, let's focus on this. Really a difference of 2 days here. Summer heat on Saturday, sunny, low 90s. Cooler, very early spring, maybe like mid-fall like on Sunday with temperatures in the 60s, clouds, and yes, Small chance of rain, but it's very tiny, 20%. Please do not get your hopes up. It is not going to amount to much of anything at all. We'll take a look at your Jerry Hunt Super Center 7-day forecast. Hot day on Saturday. Record high is 93. Big cool down Sunday. Sunday's weird because that's 70. I think it could be low 70s, but that will probably happen at midnight. The low temperatures will happen in the afternoon. You see the chilly mornings Monday, Tuesday in the 40s. 70s not that far. Remember, the average high is 74. Average low is 50. So that's not as cool as we might think. It just is a big, big change from the 90s. And then by Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, we're back in the mid to upper 80s. Really dry air still. Look at the rainfall chances or the lack thereof most of next week. But then we'll go 10 days in the future because I get the hint at the possibility of next weekend, not so much Saturday, but maybe Sunday, Monday. And this has been shifting. I will be completely transparent. In the 8, 9, 10-day range, you can't read too much into specifics. This is just, I know it's going to change. That's just really far out there. And so specific rain chances really aren't something you can really know, but at least there's a chance there, and it's starting to look like maybe a wetter pattern could develop by then. And maybe there's bigger signs starting to develop towards the end of the month that we could see the Bermuda High weekend shift off to the east, give us a little bit better chance of some rainfall. So I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about that. We're going to talk about the heat. We're going to talk about the cold front, the lack of rain. Obviously, the drought will be a big talker. Alex Williams will join me coming up in a couple of minutes here on WCNC Plus from WFMY. We'll see you coming up in about 2.5 minutes.
Weather Impact Live with Brad Panovich is sponsored by Moisture Lock, crawl space, basement, and foundation repair experts serving the Carolinas since 1988.
Tired of all this rain? Does your yard look like a swamp after it rains? Hi, I'm Greg Doggett with Moisture Lock, Charlotte's premier waterproofing and foundation repair company. The longer water sits, the softer soil will become. This can cause foundation issues. If you're having drainage issues, contact Moisture Lock. We'll get the water away from your home and out of your yard.
Moisture Lock, stabilize, enhance, protect.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Chief Meteorologist Brad Panovich here, and Alex Williams joining us from WFMY. It's a Friday, Alex, and I think the talk of the town, obviously, this week has been the drought, the heat. I think a lot of folks may be a little tired of it, but we've got a little bit more of the heat, and then we're going to see at least some relief. But let's talk about the heat first, because today was pretty warm, very windy, but tomorrow might be the hottest day of this whole heat wave as the cold front approaches from the west. And as you know, this is kind of a common thing that usually the day before the front arrives this time of year, you get that little bit of compressional heating ahead of the front. It tends to be the hottest one before we get the cool down.
Yeah, absolutely. That compressional warming is something to take very seriously. So because of that, we're going 90 tomorrow. Our record is 90, set back in 76. And so we'll see whether or not we get there and tie it. I don't know what the records are like for Charlotte. You guys are probably going to be pretty close too, right?
Yeah, 93 is our record, and we're actually forecasting 92, so pretty close. I wouldn't be shocked, because I feel like every time one of these fronts approach, this is like where you bust a little bit too low on your forecast sometimes, especially with a dry air mass and a southwest wind. It's like the perfect ingredients and setup for one of those blowtorch days where the temperature kind of jumps up a little bit higher than you expect, especially if we don't have any cloud cover first thing in the morning. So it gives me that kind of feeling like, yeah, this could be one of those days where we jump up a couple more degrees than we're actually anticipating. But certainly a hot, dry, windy day. But the reason it's going to be so hot and dry tomorrow, Alex, we actually have a cold front heading our way, and it seems weird. It feels like this is a recurring theme. We get these cold fronts. The cold fronts have been getting here eventually, but they've been these dry fronts where I wouldn't say Sunday's completely dry. There's some clouds, some moisture, maybe a shower, but compared to what's happening in the Midwest, this looks like a pretty lame attempt at some rainfall coming up on Sunday.
Yeah, you know what? We were talking about it last night, Brad, of it just not looking impressive. And now with the latest run of our in-house models that we use, it's just gone.
Yeah.
There's nothing there. And I'm like, well, this is just not good news, because we had 1 day of rain chances. Obviously, the Midwest right now dealing with a moderate risk, and you can see all of the severe thunderstorm warnings, tornado warnings. At this point, we would take severe weather just because it would bring some relief with rainfall, and it just doesn't look like it.
Yeah, what's really interesting is, that shows you how strong the front is, but I didn't actually bring this map up. Maybe I can bring it up on my laptop here real quickly. I'm going to throw a loop to Robert here. But I want to show the same map, and I know it's a little hard to see, but what I did here, Alex, look at the dew points. Look at those green numbers. Those are dew points in the 60s, even 70s, shooting all the way up into the Midwest. So the front there has moisture, but when you look in the Carolinas, you see the gray numbers or even brown. Those are dew points in the 30s and 40s. So that's the difference between the front there and here. We just don't have the moisture for the front to interact. We're going to get the cold air and the lift, but there's no low-level moisture by the time it gets here. This has been a recurring theme, I feel like, for the last couple of months.
Yeah, just kind of a lack of return flow from the Gulf. And now on the positive side of that, we're not melting in humidity just yet, right? So we're getting a break from that oppressive humidity as we go into the summer months that we typically see. But unfortunately, we need that return flow from the Gulf to really boost the dew point so we can get some beneficial rainfall, instead of the front hitting us and being like, oh, well, there's no moisture to give to me to work with, so you're not getting any rain chances.
Yeah, I said this a couple times today. I said, man, if this was June, July, or August, this type of weather would be like, people would be loving life right now, because this is what you kind of crave in August, especially after a hot, long summer with humidity. You get day in the upper 80s near 90, but no humidity. It's like a saving grace. And even tonight with the dry air in place, Alex, the sun goes down. The temperature's pretty pleasant, even though it's above normal tonight. We could see some 50s to near 60, which would feel really nice for the overnight hours. Not typical for the middle of April, but boy, it would feel nice. Let's quickly look at our future cast, because you mentioned this, and I mentioned it several times today. We'll go through Saturday. Saturday looks really dry. The front gets close to the mountains. Maybe our mountain counties could get a few showers out of this, but you notice as the front crosses the Piedmont, yeah, there's a few showers there, but it doesn't really amount to much. Even going east, yesterday at least it looked like in central and eastern North Carolina some showers. Even now it looks like that won't happen. Just a really dry flow. And if we look at the totals, the rainfall totals, I showed this map yesterday, and I was like, well, at least there's something. It was like 1/10 of an inch, which wasn't a lot to begin with. Now today, as you mentioned, not only is it not a tenth of an inch, we got zeros. I mean, it's like a trace to nothing. So
Yeah.
we went from a minuscule amount of rain to literally nothing. And this will absolutely do nothing for the drought. I think the only thing this will do, Alex, is maybe with a little bit higher humidity because of the cloud cover, a little drizzle mist, it'll at least lower the fire risk for a day and give us a little break there before it goes back up next week.
Yeah, and believe it or not, we actually were surprised with a few overnight showers this morning.
Yeah.
Our assistant news director was talking about, he's like, is that dew on the grass? And he's like, oh no, there's droplets on the car. So we actually got 100th of an inch across parts of the triad this morning. But that could be more than we receive on Sunday. And Sunday was supposed to be the bigger rainmaker. So just not doing well when it comes to rain.
Yeah, it's pretty pathetic. We're getting excited for hundredths of an inch, tenth of an inch. It's like Easter was the last time we had any rain around here, and that was like 3/10 of an inch, and that feels like a ton of rain compared to anything we've seen recently. And I would love to see something in here. So let's talk about what the front will do, Alex, because it's not going to bring us rain, but it is a pretty dramatic cool down for us. I showed this graphic today, and the high for us, I'm going 92, but on Monday morning, we could wake up in the low 40s, which is crazy big change, but the 43 is a lot closer to normal than the 92, believe it or not, for most of us. I don't know how cool you guys are going, but some of the mornings in particular, Monday, Tuesday morning, could be back to that refreshing April-type weather.
Which will be nice for some of us that don't necessarily like the heat. We're going 76 for that midnight high on Sunday.
Yep.
And then into Monday, we've got, the lower 40s. Some of the models have, upper 30s in there, and then maybe upper 30s into Tuesday morning, which that would definitely be a significant drop as well. But, I mean, we're talking Sunday is going to be kind of a surprise for people because it's going to be, they're seeing the warm temperatures and like, where is it? Because by the time you wake up, we're probably going to be in the 50s across much of the Piedmont, and then temperatures drop even more Sunday night into Monday.
Yeah, I feel like this year I'm one of those people. I don't like to turn my air conditioning on for as long as possible. I'm one of those dads. I'll hold out to Memorial Day. I can't, on my 23 years here, I can't remember running the air conditioning this much in March and April ever. And I think that'll be the shock, too. People will probably have their AC on Saturday. They'll wake up Sunday, like you said, and go, why is my air conditioning on? It's cold outside. And you might see people flip the heat on by Monday morning. That's just the crazy pattern that we're in this weekend. And the weird thing about all of it is, Alex, normally in April, if we had a front this strong with this kind of temperature change, as you mentioned, there would have been severe storms or rain or something, and we just don't have it this go around, which is really illustrative of how bad the drought and the dry setup has been.
Yeah, 100%. We talked about those drought numbers yesterday, and I know that there's been several impacts. We talked about even just Duke Energy running into impacts with one of their biggest power-producing reservoirs, running on the lower side of things. So we're not heading in a positive direction when it comes to the drought, for sure.
Yeah, so let's talk about the drought because a lot of things have happened. I know we talked a lot about this week. Yesterday, the drought monitor came out. But a lot of folks have been asking, how long has it been since we've been in a drought this bad? And what do some of these things mean? Because for a lot of us, this has been the most widespread, impactful drought in about a decade plus, and we're seeing water restrictions. So we did a story today about, what this means and how long it's been since we've seen conditions like this, at least in the Charlotte area and really for the whole state.
With more than half the region under severe or extreme drought, we wanted to know how this drought compares to those in years past. So let's verify.
Our sources, the U.S. Drought Monitor, the North Carolina Drought Management Advisory Council, and WCNC Charlotte meteorologist Brittany Van Voorhees. First, what defines a drought?
Is a mixture of things. It's a lack of rainfall, compared to normal. It is also based on soil moisture. It can also determine which area in the country you live.
Drought isn't just about a few days. It's about how far below normal rainfall we are and how dry the ground has become. Right now, those conditions are widespread. Much of North and South Carolina is in severe or even extreme drought. So how does this compare to the past?
South Carolina, it's the worst drought since 2002, and in North Carolina for most of the state since 2007.
Brittany also says drought conditions can make the heat even worse.
The drought itself can actually make it hotter because when you think about the way that the temperature warms in general, it's the sun heating up the ground that in turn heats up the air. Well, when it's wet, because we had recent rainfall, it actually acts like a cooling mechanism.
When the ground is dry, there's nothing to help cool the air, so temperatures can climb even higher. And while rain could help, getting out of a drought isn't always simple.
There is certainly a situation in which we could get out of this with only a few big rain events. The problem is the longer and deeper you are into a drought, the more you could have flooding with a big rain event.
With your Verify, I'm Megan Brad.
Yeah, so Alex, it's been a while, and I want to show you some. This is from the North Carolina Drought Advisory Board as well. I love this page, by the way. It really breaks down all the water restrictions that are in place. So the first thing you see, the mandate. There's a lot of counties that have year-round because of just different water issues. But when you go down a little bit, you start seeing some of the mandatory ones due to drought, and you're starting to see a lot of mandatory, but all the yellow are voluntary. So we've seen a lot in Mecklenburg County. Charlotte Waters instituted one. But look at all these counties and water areas that have voluntary restrictions. It's quite a few now, and I know you guys have a ton up there. A lot of those, did they go into effect today, or did they go into effect on Monday? Because the Charlotte one, I think, goes into effect on Monday, and I believe the Raleigh one the Wake County one might be going into effect today. But the big story is everybody's kind of conscious now of being conscious of conserving water.
Yeah, absolutely. For what we've heard so far, only Wilkes County has gone into the voluntary restrictions as far as water goes, and we checked with Guilford County and the city of Greensboro, and they don't plan any right now. We're doing well as far as the amount of water that we still have. But if we continue to head in this where we're expecting rain, and the rain just kind of dissipates because of the dry air, and again, that dry ground not really providing the moisture for that. As you can see your map there, I mean, what's that, a tenth of an inch over the next 7 days? That is not going to help us all that much when it comes to the drought.
Yeah, and Brittany made a good point in that package we just ran. I think it's real simplistic, Alex. People think, well, it's just a lack of rain, or when we get rain, we'll be fine. It really is the impacts of the lack of rain which classifies the drought, because you could get a bunch of rain, but if the reservoirs don't recover, or the wildfire risk stays high, or these other indicators stay there, we could still be in a drought with rainfall, because the rain isn't the only part. It's how the rain impacts these other systems, like our water systems, the crops, wildfire danger, all these. It's actually a pretty complex thing to drought monitor when you break down all the little parameters they look at. It's just not rainfall. It'd be really simple if it was just plus or minus this much rain. It really has to do with the impacts on our environment.
Yeah, for sure. And, it really depends on soil type. That's a very important thing that people don't think of, is how well can your soil type hold moisture? And that's the other thing. If we get an absolute downpour, and that's falling on a very dry ground, then most of that is not going to be soaked up. It's going to become runoff, and it's not really, it might help some of the area lakes, but it's not helping soil moisture. It's not helping and some of the farmers. And I know that I was reading on the state climate office releases those updates with drought, kind of what the impacts are. And I saw that with some of the wheat crops, I guess, the winter wheat crops, they're suffering with some of the lack of that moisture.
Yeah, I think 30% of the winter wheat was considered poor, that's the crop that's been growing during most of the winter. And we'll have to see, because now the crops are going in the ground. We'll see the crop status over the next couple of weeks. But here's the water system conservation status. This will be updated daily, kind of shows all the water systems and the drought monitor together. And you can see there's still a lot of green there, because a lot of these haven't gone into effect. They go into effect either today or next week, which will be kind of interesting. You have a map up that I think is really interesting. I'm glad you reminded me of this, because you guys had a couple of earthquakes up there near Randleman, near the reservoir up there. And Alex, I'm going to speculate here, because I've seen this in South Carolina. This might be drought related, because it's near the reservoir, and the water levels of the water, because I've seen this in South Carolina, and this is something, it's called reservoir-induced seismicity. When the water levels fluctuate dramatically in reservoirs, it can reduce or add stress to the crust, and you can get minor earthquakes.
That's fascinating. See, because we were wondering, what is it? I know that there's the East Tennessee seismic zone that's just off to the north and west. Is it being on the periphery of that? But we've had like 3 in the last 3 weeks about magnitude, 2 something. So that's kind of interesting. I'm glad you brought that up. I brought the map up because I wanted to pick your brain on what you thought, is causing the seismic activity. And that's fascinating. I didn't even know that you could get seismicity off of, drought-related changes to water levels in the reservoirs. That's pretty fascinating. I don't know who the local expert is, that we talk to here for as far as geology goes.
Yeah, we'll have to get someone to figure it out because I remember this because there's a Monticello reservoir, which is down in the Midlands of South Carolina. They had an earthquake swarm that eventually was traced back to the fluctuations in the reservoir level. And then I started doing some research today on this, and I thought this was interesting. When the Hoover Dam was built and it was filling up, there was a swarm of earthquakes that occurred in Nevada as they were filling up the reservoir. And it makes sense when you think about it. If you're in a seismic zone and you're either reducing moisture or increasing moisture in the crust, it can cause the stress to go up or down. So anytime I see a quake swarm near a reservoir, I always think of that. And I'm like, well, maybe that's what's going on there. So it would make sense totally there. So we'll have to keep an eye. Hopefully, we don't see any more rumbling, but we'll see if this happens in other parts of the state over the coming weeks. So we got 2 minutes, Robert. Do we have time to run the Artemis package? Because I was hoping to get to this, Alex, because Brittany Van Voorhees talked to the Artemis crew, or was trying to. She was on the conference call with them yesterday. But they gave some of their first press conference after the mission, and I thought some of the astronauts' responses were pretty amazing. So let's take a look.
The farthest humans have ever been from Earth, the first woman and person of color to reach deep space. The list goes on and on for milestones during the Artemis II mission. Now back on Earth, the team of 4 are reflecting on their history made. NC State grad Dr. Christina Cook spoke about hearing about the impact the mission was making back on Earth.
When my husband looked me in the eye on that video call and said, "No, really, you've made a difference," it brought tears to my eyes, and I said, that's all we ever wanted.
Astronaut Jeremy Hansen says they were all struck by things that made them feel small, which also gave a sense of life's fragility.
I kept seeing this depth to, I guess, the galaxy, for what we were visually observing out there, this depth to the galaxy that I just had never experienced before.
Astronaut Victor Glover spoke about the experience of re-entry and how that was different than previous missions.
I would tell you, I've never been base jumping, I've never been skydiving, but if you dove off a skyscraper backwards, that's what it felt like for 5 seconds.
And Mission Commander Reed Wiseman spoke about how they had a small allocation for personal items, but what he grabbed on accident kept him grounded.
On my way out of my house, I just grabbed this bracelet, which my daughter had made for me a couple years ago. It's that connection